After the intellectual nature of the Renaissance, Baroque, which followed, was emotional. By the year 1500, Renaissance artists had mastered realism. Now, around the year 1600, Baroque artists went beyond realism to wow their viewers with exuberance. Rome was the birthplace of the Baroque style, and Gian Lorenzo Bernini is considered its father. He worked in various mediums, including paintings, architecture, and sculpture work. The latter is what he's more known for, as examples are more prolific and more readily on display to the public through statues and fountains. Bernini was born in 1598 in Naples, Italy. His artistic talents surfaced at a young age, having been exposed to art through his father, Pietro Bernini, who was a lesser-known sculptor. After the family relocated to Rome, the young prodigy was presented to Pope Paul V, and, at age 11, having impressed the Pope with a completed bust in his image, earned his first patronage. He was also knighted by Pope Gregory XV in 1621 at the age of 23. His association with the papacy led him to secure the most important commissions in Rome. Bernini was commissioned to build a piazza as an extension of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, which he worked on from 1656 to 1667. He described the 4 sets of colonnades he used, extending from the Maderno façade in an oval, as the motherly arms of the Church reaching out to embrace the faithful and reuniting heretics with the Church. He designed it so that the largest amount of people could see the Pope addressing the square at one time. Also within St. Peter's, Bernini was commissioned to build the baldachin over the high altar of the basilica, acting as a visual focus between the enormous scale of the building and that of the human scale. Work began in 1623 and was finished in 1634. The bronze and gilded canopy is 95 feet tall and features 4 spiral columns partially fluted and weathered with vines, topped with 4 colossal angels standing guard at the corners of the canopy. 4 serpentine brackets form the canopy's apex and elevate the orb and cross atop. Not all artists who produce religious works are themselves religious, but an exception to that was Bernini. He also held a love for theater and often designed sets and plays. We can see a melding of his 2 interests in the Roman church of Santa Maria della Vittoria, where he designed a lavish side chapel, much like a stage, with members of the family who commissioned the art looking on from their box seats toward the main spectacle, the ecstasy of St. Teresa. Bernini captures the feeling of bliss Teresa described, of a vision she experienced when an angel pierced her heart multiple times with a heavenly arrow. We can see the duality of agony and pain, great ecstasy. His architectural skills also come into play. The scene's intent was to inspire faith in the miraculous, and Bernini did so with various mediums. The chapel is truly an installation piece, complete with framing marble pillars, fresco on the ceiling, stained glass, metal shafts illuminated from a hidden window behind the sculpture, and gilding. Bernini had a fondness for Greek and Roman mythology, and often used tales as his muse. A prime example of this is in the depiction of Pluto and Proserpina, also known as the Rape of Persephone, completed in 1622. Bernini was only 23 at the time. This piece packs an emotional punch. We can see the struggle of Persephone straining in earnest against Pluto's abduction as he drags her to the underworld. It's a piece about duality and balancing forces, powerlessness versus brutishness, strength versus delicacy. You can see the latter as Pluto's strong fingers grasp Persephone's delicate yielding flesh of her thigh. The former can be seen as Persephone's face portrays anguish and desperation, with tears leaking from her eyes and a plea for help escaping from her lips, while Pluto's is one of triumph, with a look of bemusement. Cerberus, the 3-headed dog of hell, adds a sense of terror and entrapment. The statue also looks as if Bernini was able to capture the scene in midair. Persephone's hair and garment trail behind her, and the curls of Pluto's beard appear to sway. The sculpture was commissioned by another patron, Cardinal Scipione Borghese, to decorate his villa, where it is still housed in the now Gallery Borghese in Rome. Quite a number of Bernini's sculptures are on display there. In 1623, Bernini created the sculpture Neptune and Triton. It was originally commissioned by Cardinal Montalto as a fountain for his villa, but was then bought and transferred to England, where it changed many hands, until being bought by the Victoria and Albert Museum in 1950, where it is now housed. Neptune wields his trident in a commanding grip and sports a determined look. The illusion of wind is achieved by the blowing of his hair and beard, and by the spiraling tails of his cloak behind him. He stands astride his son Triton, who blows his conch shell to the four corners of the world, heralding the king of the earth and sea approaches. A great example of Bernini's talent of transferring expression and movement onto stone is his variation of David, completed in 1624 and housed at the Galleria. Unlike Michelangelo's David, completed in 1504, that appears to be stiff and standing still after the slaying of Goliath, Bernini's is bursting with energy, just as he's about to deal the killing blow to the giant. His David exhibits a twisting motion of the upper torso, legs in a pivot with muscles flexed accordingly, and even the cloth he's wearing is draped with folds about him in such a way, giving the sense that gravity is present. You can see the fierce concentration and determination etched upon his face as he takes aim. In 1625, Bernini completed the statue of Apollo and Daphne, which also resides in the Galleria. Apollo has been shot with an arrow from Cupid to fall in love with Daphne, a beautiful nymph. She, however, is uninterested and calls out to her father for help. Her father transforms her into a laurel tree, just as Apollo catches her. You can see the transformation taking place as her fingers turn into leaves and branches. Her toes sprout roots, and bark begins to cover her legs. Her face seems to be one of surprise and dismay, while his looks of sadness. The artist captures them in mid-stride, with the wind whipping hair and garments. Where Apollo has touched her torso, Daphne's flesh is now bark, bringing to mind the notion that what you desire and nearly attain can easily slip through your fingers. The Fontana del Tritone was completed in 1643 and is located in the Piazza Barberini in Rome. It was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII for his family, the Barberinis. Triton, a sea god, is depicted as a merman kneeling in the center of an open shell, supported by the tail fins of 4 dolphins. With his head thrown back, he raises a conch shell to his lips, and water trumpets forth. Entwined amongst the dolphin tails are the papal tiara with crossed keys and bees that were the symbol for the Barberini family. This fountain was erected to provide an accessible source for the Aqua Felice aqueduct, and was the first time a sculptural fountain was used as such in a public setting. The Fountain of the Four Rivers, located in the Piazza Navona in Rome, was built in 1651. The figures are split into quadrants, each comprised of a god representing the major river associated with one of the 4 continents through which the papacy had spread, and plants and animals that call each place home. The Ganges in Asia is cast lounging with an oar between his legs, which is said to display the river's easy means of travel and navigability in comparison to the others. The Rio de la Plata in America shows a hoard of treasure beneath the god to represent prospective wealth and opportunity within the New World. The Danube in Europe, with the papal robe being held within his hands as the god actively attempts to hold it up. And lastly, the Nile in Africa is shrouded by a veil around his head, symbolizing the unknown source of the river itself within the continent. All 4 statues are seated around a large rock that holds a tall Egyptian obelisk, which symbolizes papal power, and a crowning dove representing peace of the Holy Spirit. Bernini died at the age of 81 in Rome in 1680. His aptitude of invigorating reality with emotion through his art forever proved there are no boundaries or limitations when it comes to working with stone. His pieces still continue to awe viewers with their vast array of uncanny, realistic expression and movement.